you didn't prepare anything. So just watch it.
Yeah, but I did watch Nelson's film about Nelson Sullivan's All of One, and I just want to apologize in advance for my voiceover. There isn't too much of it, but I was just like, oh my gosh. James?
But there is some, to be on the lookout for the Christina part with Christina is really fabulous, and then the part with Sylvia Miles too, where she's like, "Nelson, get it out of my face!" It's really fabulous. That's my favorite part. So I haven't watched it in 20 years, so.
And James will be signing books throughout the evening.
Okay. And then there's going to be a party afterwards, too.
Yes, upstairs.
1993, I remember we shot RuPaul for the cover, and you guys were very hands-on.
Objectionable.
Like, no, you would call up and say one day, now we just want to make sure that the eyeballs are retouched. Literally, that is an exact
thing.
thing.
Are retouching those damn eyeballs to this day.
But I want to start off and we're going to have audience questions, so please have some questions ready for this wonderful panel of Glamour Puss experts. But I want to start with James, because at the end you were saying, I just want to say I always thought Michael Alig was horrible.
Always.
And James was my club kid of choice. Like, I remember seeing the two of them together and being so excited and thinking, God, Michael is so horrible. And James is fun and positive. So now, what do you think about that, James?
Well, it's hard for me to watch. It's something that I don't like going back to. It's sort of a necessary evil. But in the years since his death, so many things keep coming out. It's like the story never ends, and it seems like there needs to be more. There needs to be an after party, But I sort of feel like I thought he was horrible then, but he's worse now. I can't reconcile the friend that I thought he was with the person that I've discovered.
What about that psychic experience?
I went to a psychic last week, and he said to me, do you know somebody named Michael? And I said, yes. And I don't think he knew, James St. James, I don't think he knew anything. And he said, Michael is here, and he's tapping me on the shoulder, and he's being really annoying, and he wants you to know that everything you said to him, he understood, even if he pretended that he didn't. And that he understood the gravity of what happened. And he said, I don't know what he's talking about, but he understood it, even if he never let on that he understood. And it kind of makes sense when you see him joking at the very end about not getting the VCR and all that stuff.
Now, Fenton Randy, what was it like working with Michael? I mean, again, since we're saying he was not Mother Teresa, was it a challenge working with him, or?
I remember meeting Michael. We were DJing at Congo Bells, and Michael would come up and say, could you play Heart of Glass? Was it Heart of Glass? Yeah. I think it was. And he stuck his hand down my pants. And he got them all.
And the rest is history.
Let's make a movie. But, we were together then, so I was like, no, Michael, thank you. But he was...
So he stuck his hands down mine.
But there was a sort of push-pull thing. He was really charming and beguiling, and then could flip into kind of undealable with. Do you know what I mean? Like, just could turn on you.
We did meet Michael before he was doing drugs, and we did like him very much. He would come over to our house, and we would have meals, and he would ask us all these questions about. He was constantly collecting information about the nightclub scene, and Fenton and I were so, kind of on the outside of the nightclub scene, but and truly, when we started Party Monster, it was before the murder. It was like we were pitching the show as a Club Kid documentary, and we didn't get the financing until the murder. That's when.
Well, but I remember that when you were filming at my apartment, the scene where you had no clue, and he just comes out of the blue and says,
I killed Angel, and that's the kind of thing that gets me in trouble.
That's when you knew, we have a documentary. We have something.
I mean, that's good TV. That's good TV.
Yeah.
And I have to say, the interesting thing about Michael, too, I felt like, is so many of the people surrounding him, like you two, like James, like Jenny, like Walt, are all the nicest, sweetest people. Do you know what I mean? So obviously, I don't know if opposites attract or what it was, but it seemed like there were a lot of nice people around him.
But he could be charming. I mean, there's no way around it. And in, like you said, in those early years, he didn't do drugs
Yeah,
for
it was
4 or 5 years.
yeah,
Those first couple, you know.
He was different. I mean,
Yeah.
Was it just drinking? Like, what's going on?
He wouldn't drink. He didn't drink.
What
He
the
would
hell?
he'd pretend to drink.
And he would fall down and pretend he was drunk, but that was just, he would just try and, it was just sort of a shtick.
And he said to me and Randy, he said, if you tell me everything you know about nightclubs, I'll take you out for dinner. And well, we didn't know much about nightclubs. We were lucky to have the DJing gig. And he took us to McDonald's. And I was like,
That was dinner.
he really did. And I was like, yeah, this guy's gonna go far.
And now, the moment in the film and in real life that I felt was Michael's greatest triumph were the Outlaw parties. Tell me about those and like just looking on the subway platform and seeing sort of a party spontaneously or at McDonald's are sort of legendary.
Well, now before Michael was doing Outlaw parties, there was a man named Vito Bruno who started the Outlaw parties. And this was in the 80s. And I remember Vito was a fantastic, I mean, just fantastic. He's still around, he's wonderful. But he had a reputation of being sort of scary a little bit. And I remember Michael and I went to him, like going to The Godfather and saying, you know, Vito, Mr. Bruno, will you hurt us? Will you break our kneecaps if we do an Outlaw party? He gave us his blessing to do them. And that's how Michael started doing them. And the first one was, I think there was a McDonald's and a Burger King and a donut shop in the subway. And they were fantastic. I do remember, though, you know, they would be 25 minutes tops, and then the cops would come. And I remember we did one in a subway in the winter time, and the firemen came with hoses and hosed us down, and we were all running from the police with like icicles dripping from our hair because it was like, it was like below zero. So I mean, they were always, you never knew what you were going to get. And I remember one time we did one at Al Capone's vault in Chicago, and we broke into it. This was right after the Rivera, and the police came, and we were all arrested, and then we ended up doing runway up and down in the jail cell for the policemen, and they loved it so much that they let us go.
I was born 1995.
Okay.
I love rubbing that in. But also it's embarrassing. But no, so I moved here because 8th grade, I'm just gonna get my fangirl moment out. I remember I was in 8th grade, hated my life. I was a faggot, was a tranny, didn't know what I was. I was in Wisconsin, dad beat me all day long. And I saw Nelson Sullivan's videos. I think it's 9th Avenue Project on YouTube. What is it?
That's a whole other story for 5 9th Avenue,
Oh,
which is the house
there
where
tea?
Nelson
They're
lived.
stealing
It was
the-
like,
Yeah, but
amazing.
so those videos, I literally was like, oh my God, there's a whole world for me and people like me. I don't know if that Suzanne Barty at Copacabana is still running, but I need to get there now. And then I learned about Party Monster and you and how you're a writer. I'm a writer now.
Fantastic.
I love you. Stop, I'm gonna cry.
we're watching them fall
I'm
in
gonna
love
come
right
and cry at
before
the same
our
time. So just another Wednesday for me. But no, so yeah. So I moved here and so many other people moved here because of you and because of Nelson and you two for clocking what was going on, and we're like, bitch, we need to turn this into a movie. So thank you for that. And thank you to Paper and everyone for documenting all of this. You know, I should not be here, but I am because of you and you. So that's, yeah.
But that is it. That's the story of all of us. I mean, we all come to New York because I came because of Diane.
I was just gonna say,
because
in your
I
book,
saw pictures of Diane.
you brought this bitch here.
It was Andy Warhol for me. I read Popism. It changed my life. You know, it was one of those things. I need to go find my tribe. I need
Exactly.
to be with my people, and I did, and I was.
And you were
here.
that for me.
Yeah.
So wait, the hug.
It just keeps.
Let's
going.
get him a room here at the Roxy Hotel.
The house was like 4 stories, ramshackle. It was falling apart. Like the stairs.
It was like a
would
hillbilly shack in the middle of the meatpacking district.
And you'd walk up, and you would think that the stairs were going to collapse. The floorboards were like would jump up and down as you walked, but it was filled with just art and tchotchkes and just it was such an amazing. You always felt so at home the minute you got there, and he was with his dog. lightning.
Blackout.
Blackout, yeah.
From the blackout.
And I just remember Michael Musto would take me all the time, and I didn't know who he was, and but he was just
And tons of people coming in and out.
yeah,
all
in and
the
out.
time.
And then after he passed away on July 4th, and then
1988.
yeah, Larry and Lahoma and Rue and Bunny were all staying there, and so they just continued on, and it just became this legendary house. But
But he was prescient. Like I think he foresaw so much of what has happened and who we are and where we live, and the whole idea of just being on camera all the time. Nelson never questioned. Of course, you should be on camera.
we were always tap dancing in for the photographers for whatever paparazzi was around. But often when Nelson came around with that bright light, I remember running from it and saying, "You're like, no, Nelson, not tonight."
That's what people were saying. No, they were like, "Girl, put this camera down."
Yeah, but it's funny that you wouldn't have that wouldn't happen today. Anyone with a camera and a light, I mean, it's the times have changed so much. But it was a new thing, and it was very intrusive. But he knew what he was doing. But at the same time, I remember just being Jackie. Oh, and, no, not tonight. But then later, when Patrick would be around, I'd be like,
Right.
so it's just it was the cusp of when times were changing.
It was also interesting, I thought that Albert said how it's only a matter of time before drag queens will become accepted. I mean, that was so psychic or just randomly true.
Well, there was a build-up going. I don't know if you remember that 1992 thing when there was a big drag explosion. Linda Simpson, talks about it a lot in her books and shows, and it does sort of seem like they were building and building and building, and then it sort of fell off for a while, and then of course these nuts came along, and the rest is history.
No, Rue always just communicated this clear sense. I am a star. It was just it was weird. It was a sort of a given thing,
I need to know how much everyone was getting paid
Oh.
at these clubs. Because, I moved here, Suzanne Barsh, $100. You know what I mean?
No, I was
Love
doing
to
doors
assist.
for $100. I did the doors for $100 a night for
Okay.
years.
How much was Michael leaving on a successful, Club USA night?
He was doing okay.
Like 1,000.
More than that, but
Stop.
Peter Gation was paying for the loft.
Were there dark rooms at these parties? The fuck? Or you fucked on the dance floor? Or the bathroom?
No, there were dark rooms at the Limelight, but the club kids were not allowed in. And I do remember,
Clown shit.
yeah,
Men only.
I remember going in the '80s. There would be jerk off clubs. And I would go with Michael Musto, and we'd walk in, and they'd say, "Michael and James out." We would be in tutus and shit, and they were like, "No."
Okay. Were you and Michael actually known as the duo that you currently kind of are? Were you besties? Oh my god, girl, let's get ready right now, go to the party together? Or were you kind of just stuck with her because you wrote this book about her and she married someone? That was your best friend? That was your sis?
We lived in the same building
Were you
forever.
known as Jane St. James and Michael Alig in the scene? Those two were back again.
For a few years. There was a few years where
Not really.
No. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
Did you ever hook up? Why?
What's the dick giving?
No. I have seen that man naked too many times.
Well, then I'm going to skip some questions because I have one more. Does it remember about, I don't know where I got this from, where someone pushed her prolapse in with a pencil?
Well, I don't know about that.
Okay.
But I will
Okay,
say,
keep moving back to art stuff.
No, but I will say that I was in love with Kyoki for a while.
I can tell the question about
He
Kyoki.
was so cute. I mean,
Okay.
you saw him there. He was just adorable.
So, again, do we hate Kyoki or we like him? He was a guy using him or we love Kyoki?
No. They were really in love, and it was very genuine. And Kyoki was a very genuine cutie patootie.
Fab. Okay.
Do you think it was a flash in the pan, the club kids, quote unquote, or do you think another resurgence, maybe just a little bit tweaked, would come back around,
After Angel's death and everything, it became sort of. I felt like things were. The club scene was on a downslide for a little bit, but then it always bounces right back. And a couple of years later, it was even more fabulous. And I remember in 2004, there was a whole thing, and then with the social media coming, and it seems like more people, it's more inclusive now,
Yeah.
and it's more people are able to participate, even if you're in Oklahoma or wherever. I mean, you get to see what's going on and feel a part of it. So I think it comes back. It always comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think that moment was unique in that I think so much what happened was, you could say a flash in the pan, but that implies that it ended. But I think it actually iterated out into the culture, and that we were all playing with media and creating this sort of microverse, which in itself was perhaps to some extent a replication of the factory and what Warhol was doing there. I think it's just continued to iterate out. So I wouldn't say it's a flash in the sense that it was something that happened, it's over. Lady Gaga, I mean, so many, the legacy of Nelson and the Club Kids, I think is huge culturally.
And social media sort of adopted so much of the language of the Club Kids because that all happened prior to the explosion of social media.
Well, there is that thing where sometimes, and I know you guys know about this, and where you do a photo shoot, and it's like 1985, and you do a photo shoot, and then you walk away and you think that's the end of it, and then 30 years later it's on Instagram, and you're like, what? Like, these things never end. They never, like, how is it back again? So there's...
Yeah, it's like 30 years later, Party Monster,
We're still tap dancing.